of you in this very, very important subject of serving, getting a taste for understanding and hearing about Krishna through service, which is the actual way. So I would like to read the verse first, and of course we'll chant for a couple of minutes and then read the verse and then some comments. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopijana Vallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vrajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shiva Sari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nitai Gaura Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Hari Bo, Gaura Hari. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada. Jayam Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivraj Kacharya Ashto Tarashatra Shishiman Abhaya Charanarvinda Bhakti Vedanta Swami Maharaja Shri Prabhupada ki Jayam Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivraj Kacharya Ashto Tarashatra Shishiman Shri Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Thakur Prabhupada ki Ananta Koti Vaisnava Bindiki Namacharya Shri Hari Das Thakur ki Prem se kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivashari Gaur Bhaktivinoda ki Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shyamakunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki Vrindavan Dham ki Mayapur Dham ki Gangamayi ki Jamunamayi ki Tulsi Devi ki Bhakti Devi ki Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki Shri Jugadhar Maharinam Sankirtan ki Brihat Mridanga ki Nitai Gaur Premanandi. All glory to these Sama devotees, all glory to these Sama devotees, all glory to these Sama devotees, all glory to Shri Guru, Shri Gauranga. So today we'll be speaking on a very famous and beautiful verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is first canto, second chapter, text number 16. And so I will read the verse and Sushrushva Shradhanasya Vasudeva Kataruchehi Syan mahat-sevaya Vipra Punyatirtha Nishevanat. And the translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. O twice born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Purport. The conditioned life of a living entity is caused by his revolting against the Lord. There are men called devas, or godly living beings, and there are men called asuras, or demons, who are against the authority of the Supreme Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, 16th chapter, a vivid description of the asuras is given, in which it is said that the asuras are put into lower and lower states of ignorance, life after life, and so sink through the lower animal forms and have no information of the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead. These asuras are gradually rectified to God consciousness by the mercy of the Lord's liberated servitors in different countries according to the supreme will. So, Om Jnana Timirandasya Agaram Jana Sharakaya Chakshurum Meditam Minatasmai Sri Gurave Namaha. So I wanted to just mention something in relation to this first part of the purport, which is that here Srila Prabhupada, in his very broad and intelligent preaching method, he's referring to not only devotional service in Krishna consciousness, but anywhere where there is and there's a reference a little later in the purport that, he's speaking about whoever comes to the point of hearing about the Lord from those persons who are liberated, that person will gain the desire to hear about Krishna. So he's not just speaking about India or the Vedas. He's also speaking about Christianity and other religions. Therefore, he says, liberated servitors in different countries. And later on, Srila Prabhupada gives different categories of those liberated persons. Such devotees of God are very confidential associates of the Lord. And when they come to save human society from the dangers of godlessness, they are known as powerful incarnations of the Lord, as sons of the Lord, as servants of the Lord, or as associates of the Lord. So there's the list. But none of them falsely claim to be God themselves. This is a blasphemy declared by the asuras. And the demoniac followers of such asuras also accept pretenders as God or his incarnation. In the revealed scriptures, there is definite information of the incarnation of God. No one should be accepted as God or an incarnation of God unless he is confirmed by the revealed scriptures. So this is the first reference as to the unfortunate tendency that exists, just like some of you in the audience are from Trinidad. So now in Trinidad, we have the incarnation of Ramananda Roy, and he's claiming that Prabhupada initiated him in a dream. He's Ramananda Roy. And so these things happen. What to speak of those that actually claim to be God. One such person who claimed that way, Srila Prabhupada said, devotees came to Prabhupada and said, this person is saying he is God, Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, oh, then you can tell God that I offer my boot in his face. And if he's God, he can punish me. So that was Prabhupada's rather stark remark about how to worship such so-called incarnations. So this is one warning. Now in the next paragraph, Srila Prabhupada gives another warning, another possibility. So the servants of God are to be respected as God by the devotees who actually want to go back to Godhead. As we sing in the morning in our temples, many devotees at home, that Sakshad Haritva, that there's no difference in the servitor God and the God from the point of view of the follower, in the sense that the servant of God is like, as Prabhupada gave his classic example, he said like an ambassador or a viceroy. They have the full power of the government, but they're not the president, but they have the full power of the president. So a devotee, an empowered devotee, especially a Shakti Vaishavatar like Srila Prabhupada, like Narada Muni, like Prithu Maharaj, they are especially powered. But any devotee who represents Krishna faithfully, then that devotee also should be respected. And of course, devotees are, by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's indication, manidena. Manidena means that they respect everyone because the Paramatma is within the heart. Just like Govinda Das, when he was serving Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he came, he served prasadam, and then the Lord took prasadam and he took rest. He would take rest, and normally Govinda would come in and massage his legs. But on this particular occasion, the Lord was right up against the doorway. So Govinda was thinking, how am I going to get in? So finally he passed over the body of the Lord and he started massaging. The Lord woke up and said, Govinda, have you taken your meal? Govinda said, no, when I finished the massage. He said, why haven't you taken the meal? And he said, well, my Lord, I can't pass over you. And he said, but how did you get in? He said, well, I came in to do a service. And if for doing service, there's some punishment, I'll be glad to accept it. But I'm not going to commit any offense just so I can eat. So this was his mentality, that he knows, and any devotee knows. I remember when I was a young brahmachari, we were told again and again, you never step over the body of any living entity. Of course, it's may be difficult in the sense of ants or small insects or microbes. They also have Paramatma in their heart, those that even have a heart. But I don't know if microbes have hearts. But the Lord is there. The Lord is accompanying even every atom, or to speak of the living entities. But we can't avoid that. But especially in a human being, Paramatma is more accessible and can become more manifest directly in the eyes and the consciousness of the person. So devotees think like that. Such servants of God are called Mahatmas or Tirthas, and they preach according to a particular time and place. The servants of God urge people to become devotees of the Lord. They never tolerate being called God. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was God himself, according to the indication of the revealed scriptures, but he played the part of a devotee. People who knew him to be God addressed him as God, but he used to block his ears and with his hands and chant the names of Lord Vishnu. He strongly protested against being called God, although undoubtedly he was God himself. The Lord behaves so to warn us against unscrupulous persons who take pleasure in being addressed of God as God. So here we see that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu has, even though he is God, undeniably, he even in a couple of occasions, like the Praharana Lila, he manifested his different incarnations for different devotees. But still, generally speaking, especially with Advaitacharya, because Advaitacharya knew that he is Krishna and Advaitacharya is Mahavishnu. So we know from Krishna Lila that Mahavishnu was so anxious to get darshan of Krishna that he stole the 9 sons of the Dwarka Brahmin so that Krishna would come. Now, he knew that by doing that, ultimately, Krishna would be summoned by Arjuna and he would come. So this is, so anyway, Advaitacharya, but because Advaitacharya was the same age as, or even a little older than Jagannath Mishra, Lord Chaitanya saw him as, and also he was a disciple of Madhavendra Puri. So Lord Chaitanya saw him as Guru. And so they would always have mock fights about who is supreme. And so this is very wonderful, wonderful pastime. So we'll finish the purport. So the point is that Lord Chaitanya is God, and he's showing no devotee wants to be called God. The servants of God come to propagate God consciousness, and intelligent people should cooperate with them in every respect. By serving the servant of God, one can please God more than by directly serving the Lord. Srila Prabhupada would say, love thy dog, love the person. So if you compliment someone's dog or someone's son or someone's dependent, then they become very inclined to deal with you. And so in the same way, if we serve the devotees of the Lord becomes more pleased by that. Actually, there's a verse in the Adi Purana. I can't remember the verse right now, but my memory hasn't been so good today. Anyway, basically the verse says that that Yeme Bhakta Jana, I found it. Yeme Bhakta Jana Parta, Name Bhakta Chate Janaha, which means whoever declares oneself, no, that's not, actually, I don't think that's the verse. That whoever declares himself to be a bhakta, he's not really my bhakta. But whoever serves my bhakta, my devotee, then he is the best of bhaktas. Bhaktaste me bhaktatama. So those who worship me alone are not my true bhaktas. I consider those who are bhaktas of my bhaktas to be the highest of all. So this is Lord Chaitanya, Krishna's declaration to Arjuna. The Lord is more pleased when he sees that his servants are properly respected, because such servants risk everything for the service of the Lord and so are very dear to the Lord. Now, this statement is very important for all of us. And this is something that we were highlighting yesterday in the Gaur Purnima, that Lord Chaitanya has given the order, Otta eva ami agya dilun sabakare chahantahan prema pala deha jaritari. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, I order every person within the universe, you must take these fruits of love of God and distribute them. So here, this is how we become extremely dear to Krishna. Not because distributing books or distributing the holy name or distributing some form of a glorification of Krishna is especially difficult, or something very greater than some other service. But the risk of going out and distributing books, you have to associate with materialistic persons all day, trying to convince them to take something that tells them that everything they're doing is wrong. You can imagine what a sales technique, Usually people try to sell us something and they say, this is the most wonderful product, et cetera, et cetera. But we're saying, here's something that tells you everything you're doing in your life is wrong. Forget about all that. Even Prabodhananda Saraswati, Srila Prabhupada quoted a verse where he says, this is my preaching technique. I go up to someone, I offer them dandavats, and I say, my dear sir, you are so intelligent, you are so capable, you are so wonderful. And of course, when the person hears that, well, go on. Yes, I'm sure with all your great intelligence and capability, you can understand my message, which is forget about all that and just take the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya upon your head. So they may not like the ending, but that's what he said. Otherwise, which is something I see Vaisheshika Prabhu in his technique of preaching. And Prabhupada would also do that. Prabhupada said, I will listen to someone for 5 minutes, then I understand their point, and then I will proceed to tell them tell them about Krishna consciousness. So if we want to become dear to Krishna, because why are they dear? Because they take risks. If someone takes a risk, just like the old classical 1800s vaudeville of the hero, the villain with the big mustache, and the hero, and then the hero comes and rescues the damsel in distress, and she's so grateful. So and Krishna rescued so many people. He rescued 16,000 wives and 16,000 women, and he married them all. They were so grateful. They had no hope. They were practically prisoners. Ramachandra rescued Sita, and so the innumerable stories. How when someone takes a risk for you, they become very, very dear to you. So Krishna, when someone goes out and preaches Krishna consciousness, even if you do it in your own home, we're always taking a risk, because the person we're preaching to, maybe they'll take it, maybe they won't. Maybe they like it, maybe they won't. Maybe they'll take a book or prasadam, maybe they won't. But our duty, Prabhupada said, our duty is to approach them. The result is up to Krishna. But our duty is to do our best to give them Krishna consciousness. So the Lord declares this in Bhagavad Gita, that no one is dearer to him than one who risks everything to preach his glory. By serving the servants of the Lord, one gradually gets the quality of such servants. And of course, that famous verse of Bhagavad Gita is Nachatas min manasheshu kaschin me priyatama bhavita na chame tasmad anyad priyataro bhuvi. Priyataro means there's no one dearer. Of course, sometimes it says priyatama. Priyatama means that they're the most dear. But priyatama, priyatara, either one. So one becomes qualified by hearing the glories of the Lord. Therefore, in the Bhagavatam, it says, Pibantiye Bhagavata Atmana Satam Harikatam Mitam Shravana Bhuttishu Sambitam. That one has to drink this nectarian message of the Supreme Personality of Godhead through the ear holes. And the result, Punantiye Vishaya Vidushita Shayam. The result is that all the unwanted things and all of the things that contribute to materialistic consciousness will be eliminated from the heart. And then one will seek the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of God. The eagerness to hear about God is the first qualification of a devotee eligible for entering the kingdom of God. So when Srila Prabhupada went to Vrindavan during the parikram of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. And, Prabhupada at that time, I don't think he wasn't initiated. But he went and he got there the day before Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur left. So was leaving. He left a little earlier before the whole thing was over. So they made an announcement that all the devotees should go to such and such a place, but Guru Maharaj is leaving, and anyone who wants to stay, they can hear the class will be at such and such a time, last class. So Prabhupada went, and later on, when he was being initiated, so Sharanga Goswami, Bhakti Sharanga Goswami, told Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, here is Abai and Bhaktisiddhanta Karimal. I know him. He likes to hear. And he gave him both initiations, just because Prabhupada likes to hear. And so, such an important qualification that if we have this desire to hear, and as I always say to the devotees, that if you want to chant nice japa, then what should you do? You should hear about Krishna at least half an hour, 45 minutes before taking rest. Then when you wake up, your consciousness will be full of desire to hear about Krishna. So, but if if the last thing we do is have a telephone call or some business, some movie, something else, then that's what we'll think about in the morning. So this is our sankalpa, that we establish our Krishna consciousness by serving the Supreme Personality of Godhead in that way. So, so there are many wonderful verses that indicate how we should. This particular verse, we can see that in his commentary on this verse, Sridhar Swami, he said that one method is you can serve holy places, but and by that one can attain service to the devotees. But there's also a direct method to do this. And then the famous verse from the first canto of the first chapter, first canto. Yad Veda Samshaya Sutta Munaya Pashamanaya Sadhya Punyan Yupashvishta Sadhun Yapo Nushevaya. O Sutta, those great sages who have completely taken shelter of the lotus feet of the Lord can at once sanctify those who come in touch with them, whereas the water of the Ganga can sanctify only after a prolonged use. That was first chapter of first canto, 15th verse. And then later on in the 10th canto, Krishna says, Nahyam mayani tirtani na deva mrich chilamaya te punant yurukurne yurukalina darshanadeva sadavaha. No one can deny that there are holy places with sacred rivers, or that the demigods appear in deity forms made of earth and stone. But these purify the soul only after a long time, whereas saintly persons purify just by being seen. When Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in Jagannath Puri, Satyaraj Khan, who was the leader of the devotees in Kulinagram, he came to Lord Chaitanya and he said, so how can I escape this materialistic existence? And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said two things, that Vaisnava Sevana and Harinam Nirantara, that you chant Krishna Nam Nirantara, you chant the holy name incessantly, and you serve the Vaishnava. So he asked, what is a Vaishnava? And Lord Chaitanya said, a person who once chants the holy name. Of course, that means once without offenses. So the next year he came back and he asked the same question. What is a real Vaishnava? They said a real Vaishnava is one who is always chanting the holy name, otherwise a Madhyamadikari. And then the next year he came back and he said, who is the best Vaishnava? And so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, the best Vaishnava is that person whom upon seeing them, we become a devotee. Just by seeing them, we become a devotee. So, and of course, in the Bhagavatam, it also says, a famous verse, that Bhavadvida Bhagavatas Tirtha Bhuta Swayam Vivo Tirti Kurvanti Tirtani Swantastena Gadabhitaha. That this is addressing Vidura as he returned after his long pilgrimage, when actually he was kicked out of the palace. But he was so saintly that he accepted that. So he said, so it was said to him, please, you are Bhavadvidha, no? You are everything to us, and you are representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Tirtha Bhuta Swayam Vivo, and you are just like a place of pilgrimage. Tirtha Kuvanti Tirtani. And whenever you go to a place of pilgrimage, you are the one that sanctifies it. Why? Swantastena Gadabrita. Because you have Gadabrita, you have Lord Vishnu, the carrier of the club, in your heart. And that's why you can purify everyone and everything. So this is a very, very advanced platform. So there are many, many indications, especially Sanatana. Of course, one of the verses I thought about when I saw this mahat-seva dvaram ahur vimuktes. When there is mahat-seva, Srila Prabhupada in the Bhagavatam, this is a verse from 5th canto, 5th chapter, text number 2. Prabhupada says in the purport, those great mahats pointing to see, they could be devotees or they could be impersonalists. Of course, impersonalist doesn't mean Mayavadis. It means Brahmavadis. So if you serve these great elevated persons, then you are guaranteed success. But tamo dwaram yoshitam sangi sangam. But those who associate with the opposite sex, tamo dwara, they are entering into the gateway to ignorance or hellish life. Mahantaste samachita prashanta. That association makes the heart and the consciousness become very peaceful and very happy. And this is because the sadhu, the saintly person, is so dear to everyone, and everyone is so dear to that saintly person. So this is the instruction from Rishabdev to his sons. And of course, Lord Chaitanya gave Sanatana Goswami a warning. Asat sangatya, e vaisnavachar, stri sangi, eka asadu, Krishna bhakta ar. So he says that a Vaishnava is not interested in associating. He gives up the association of worldly minded persons and simply, and who are those? It says there's basically two basic categories of people you should definitely not associate with. People who are associated with the opposite sex, and people, that's one kind. And the other kind, Krishna abhakta, those who are not devotees of the Lord. And that's even more serious, much more serious, that we associate with such persons. Now we have examples of people who are on this level of service. And the most famous example, which Srila Prabhupada cites many times in his books, is Sri Narada Muni. Narada Muni became Narada Muni by serving the Bhaktivedantas. And so how did he do that? He took their remnants. He took two kinds of remnants. The first remnants he took were the foodstuffs that they left behind. He would take that, and he felt immense spiritual awakening. But the most potent remnant that he took was to hear from them. As Srila Prabhupada says here in the purport, that by associating with them, you will naturally hear from them, saintly persons. And just by seeing their qualities, you will acquire those qualities. That's why association of Vaishnavas, as it says in the Rupa Goswami, and this was also given by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he said that Adau Shraddha Tata Sarusangata Vachana Kriya, that with an initial faith, and Srila Prabhupada defines that initial faith as at least, except in the beginning of Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada said, at least you accept theoretically that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In another occasion, Prabhupada said something very humorous. He said, we are very happy to be devotees of the Lord. But even if Krishna doesn't exist, which of course, Prabhupada, of course, he said, even if you think that Krishna doesn't exist, if you live as a devotee, you will still be happy, because devotees are carefree. Devotees simply want to please Krishna, and they're very happy. So, and then tato narta nivritti syat, and tato nishta ruchistata. And when you do that, when you have that faith, then sadhu sangha, then you associate with devotees. And that association is defined by Krishna in Bhagavad Gita. Machchita madgata prana bodhyanta paraspara. So what do devotees do when they come together? Sometimes they have a pizza party, but if we really want to have nice association, what do? we fill our hearts by chanting the holy name, by worshiping, etc. Much chitta, our hearts are absorbed in Krishna, our minds are absorbed in Krishna. And bodhyanta, we inquire about Krishna. Katyantas chamam nityam. We're always engaged in hearing about Krishna and glorifying Krishna. These are the activities of a person who are definitely, these are the symptoms of a devotee. And the results of that wonderful association, tushanti cha ramanti cha. First, you will feel, you get a real taste for understanding and worshiping Krishna, and then Raman, you will feel great happiness and pleasure and bliss in Krishna consciousness. So this is very, very important that we associate with the devotees. Lord Kapila Dev, when he was instructing his mother, he said, Satam pasangam mama virya sambido. That satam means saintly persons, those who are interested in sat or eternality or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Prasangam, you don't just associate with them, you should be anxious. Prasanga, you should be anxious to associate with them. Mama virya sambido. How do you identify them? Lord Kapila Dev says, because they're always speaking about their sambido or sambada, virya sambada, always engaged in discussing and speaking my glories. These are the kind of persons you should want to associate with. Whatever they say will enter into the ears and go down to the heart. And what will be the result? That then the path of devotional service will be opened up, completely opened up, and Shraddha Ratir Bhaktir Anukramishati. Then first a faith will appear in the heart, and then Rati, attraction. You will be more and more attracted to the Lord. Then Bhakti, then the actual, from that attraction, you will want to serve Krishna day and night, constantly. Anukramishati. These things will come. These things will develop gradually. You shouldn't be anxious to try to make them manifest by some mechanical or external effort. They will come. And then another beautiful verse, which was one of my favorite verses from the 11th canto. When Nimi Maharaj meets the Navayogendras, he's so ecstatic. He's so grateful. Now, he's a great king. Nimi Maharaj was a super powerful king. But when he met these great saintly persons, what happened? He became he just blurted out, Atta Atyantikam Kshamam. That Atta Atyantimam Kshamam. That it is so wonderful that I have this opportunity to be with you, and what am I going to do about that? What do you do when you meet a saintly person? You are, he says to the Navayogendras, you are completely pure, anagha. You are completely pure, and therefore prichchamo bhavato. I want to ask you so many questions. Now, our acharyas, they mention that when you meet a saintly person, just like when Krishna went to Mithila, so he was greeted by the king Bahulashva and by Shutadev. So these were two, devotees. One was a king and one is a Brahmin, poor Brahmin. So Krishna was so happy to see his devotees desirous to serve him. He split in two, and all of his devotees expanded in two also. So there were two Narada Munis and there were two of everybody. And one group, and one Krishna went with Bahulashva, another Krishna went with Shuddhadev. But what did they do? They sat Krishna down, they gave him a glass of water, and they began to glorify him. And of course, Bahulashva offered him many valuable things. And Shuddhadev offered him very valuable knowledge. And he was equally pleased. But so the point is, this is what you do. So why did King Nimi bypass this etiquette? Because he was overwhelmed. And he was also thinking, these great saintly persons, just like it mentions about Shukadeva Goswami, whenever he would come to the house of someone, he would only stay as long as milking of the cows. Of course, I guess if you wanted him to stay longer, you'd have many cows. Then he would have to, stay. If you have 20 cows, then he'd have to wait for a few hours. He would take some milk, he would give some information. When Gargamuni arrived at the house of Nanda Maharaj, Gargamuni was so, Nanda Maharaj was so happy. Now, Nanda Maharaj has Krishna as his son, but he was thinking this, he said, we are poor grihastas simply lost in materialistic life, and you have come to bless us and give us and sanctify our home and sanctify our lives and sanctify our hearts. Therefore, I'm so grateful. And this is Nanda Maharaj. He's so worshipable that Raghupati Upadhyaya said, some people study the Vedas, some people study the Mahabharata, some people study the Puranas, because out of fear of material existence. But for me, no, I worship Nanda Maharaj because he has the absolute truth crawling around in his courtyard. So this is the position of Nanda, and Nanda is begging Krishna. And the devotee of Krishna is so dear to him, like what's his name? So I only got 3 hours sleep last night, so I'm a little tired. Famous devotee that went to see Krishna. Somebody can say his name.
You're talking about
Sudam Vipra. So what did Krishna do? He put him on his bed and he began to worship him. The queens couldn't understand. Even Sudam, when he was approaching Krishna's palace, he thought somebody was just going to grab him by the neck and throw him out. He had like ragged cloth. And here he saw this opulence of Dwarka and everybody dressed with jewels and, silk. And here he is with a cloth with holes in it. And so, he was, but, Krishna put him on his bed and worshiped him. And this is how dear a devotee is. So then Nimi Maharaj, he was so anxious that he just forgot about all the etiquette. And he also thought, what do these Yogendras have to do in my palace? They'll certainly be bored or will see my materialistic lifestyle and they'll go away very quickly. So he thought, I have to immediately ask them, what is the purpose of life? Please enlighten me. Samsmarishmin kshanardopi. He said, the one was completely saved and taken out of the samsara with satsanga shevadir nrinam, with the association of the devotees, which is shevadir nrinam, which means it is the greatest treasure that one can find in human society. Such a beautiful reception that, it's so unfortunate that in our society, we glorify somebody who can kick a ball around and pay them $40 million or $100 million. You can hit a ball with, or you can kick it, or you can throw it, or you can twirl around, and you get millions of dollars. And if you're giving transcendental knowledge, you may not have enough to eat. That's modern society. But in this society, the greatest kings, they were worshiping. They had all opulence and all power, and they were worshiping the devotees. So how great are the devotees? Now, there's another beautiful verse that was spoken by Mahaprabhu, telling about how potent and how important association with devotees is. This is Chaitanya Charitamrita. I think it's chapter 22 of Adi Leela. I can't remember, verse 80 or something like that. That Krishna Bhakti Janma Mula Hai Sarusanga. That the root cause of Krishna Bhakti appearing within the heart is sadhu sangha, is the association of devotees. But Krishna Prema Janme. But even when Krishna Prema has manifested in one's heart, Tengho Punha Mukhya Anga. Still, the association of devotees is still the most important thing. Even when one is situated in Prema Bhakti, it's not that association with devotees is a stepping stone. The six Goswamis always relish so much being together and discussing about Krishna. Nana Shastra Vichara Naika Nipuno. They would sit together and analyze Shastra so deeply, so wonderfully. This is the kind of association we want, as Rupa Goswami mentions in Upadeshamrita. If you find someone who is shushushaya and who is always speaking about Krishna, and if they are free from envy and criticism, you should serve that devotee with all your heart and your soul. So these are the great benefits of associating with devotees and hearing from devotees and serving those devotees. Now we know that Narottam Das Thakur, he became blessed by serving his spiritual master by doing menial service. And another great example is Ishvara Puri. In Chaitanya Charitamrita describes that when Madhavendra Puri was leaving this world, two of his devotees were there. They were two of his oldest devotees. One was Ishvara Puri, and the other was Ramachandra Puri. So it states in Chaitanya Charitamrita, it states that in that moment, by glorifying and by serving menial service, Ishvara Puri became blessed with pure love of God. He became the greatest associate and the most pure disciple of Madhavendra Puri by doing menial, insignificant service. Whereas Ramachandra Puri, by criticizing his guru at the time of death, he became cursed. So two examples, what to do and what not to do. So there are so many examples of how devotees became so elevated by serving the Vaishnavas, by serving devotees. They became completely blessed. Even today we were discussing, or yesterday, that when Lord Vishnu, Narada Muni asked Vishnu, who is your greatest devotee? And Lord Vishnu sent him to different devotees. And so in one case, he sent him to see one Brahmin, and he said, tell this Brahmin that I have given him the benediction that he can immediately come to Vaikuntha. So Narada Muni thought, oh, he must be a very great devotee. And then he went to that devotee and he said, I have the most wonderful news for you. You can go immediately to Vaikuntha. And the devotee said, my dear sage, thank you so much. But I only do what my Guru Maharaj says. I only serve my Guru Maharaj. If my Guru Maharaj tells me to go to Vaikuntha, I will go. And if he tells me to stay here, I will stay here. And if he tells me to go to hell, I will go to hell. And so Narada Muni could see that this attitude is so great. So I would like to conclude with one verse, which I used to know, but I had to write it down now because I forgot it. This is a verse from the prayers of Muchukunda. This is found in several places in Chaitanya Charitamrita and in the prayers of Muchukunda in Srimad Bhagavatam. So beautiful verse. Pava pavago brahmato yada bhajej janasya tar yachuta satsamagama satsangamo yarhi tadaiva sadgatav paravareshe tvai chayate rati. O my Lord, O infallible Supreme Person, when a person wandering throughout the universes becomes eligible for liberation from material existence, he gets an opportunity to associate with devotees. When he associates with devotees, his attraction for you is awakened. You are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the highest goal of the topmost devotees and the Lord of the universe. So, Muchukunda, he realized the greatness of Krishna. And of course, it was also spoken by Lord Chaitanya that Brahmandramite kon Bhagavan Jeev Guru Krishna Prasadi Bhai Bhakti Latta Bij, that if one, while wandering around in this universe, becomes so fortunate to get the association with a devotee, then that devotee is considered Guru. And by the mercy of Guru, he gets Krishna. And by Krishna's mercy, he has gotten the opportunity to meet the Guru. And Jiva Goswami says in relation to these two points, that actually this is put in reverse. That actually when you get the privilege of the association with devotees, then you can become eligible for liberation. And then your attraction is awakened. But either way, because certainly wandering in this universe and becoming frustrated by Krishna's, sometimes there's a quick method of doing something and the slow method. So if one takes the slow method of coming to Krishna by his long but sure path of going through material existence, one thing after another, one experience after another, until you finally realize that, what am I doing here? This is so miserable. I'm suffering so much. And then Krishna arranges that somehow or another you get the association of devotees. And then all the other things fall into place. So the association of the Vaishnavas, as it says here, is so important for developing bhakti. And the development of bhakti really comes from hearing about Krishna. Because the more we hear about Krishna, just like you hear about anyone, the more you hear about them, the more their existence becomes prominent in your heart. So anyway, these are some points on this particular verse. And so I'll stop here, see if there are any questions or comments. And again, thank you very much for your attention. Here's one. What is the difference between Mayavadi, Brahmavadi, and Shunyavadi? Okay, good question. A Brahmavadi is a person who, just like Dhritarashtra was a Brahmavadi, meaning he knew who Krishna was. He knew Krishna was supreme, but he didn't worship him, because he didn't really understand fully Krishna's position. But he didn't criticize Krishna, nor did he say that Krishna was created from Maya, or that the Brahman is greater than Krishna. He simply knew Brahman. And so these are Brahmavadis. And of course, Mayavadis are those that say Krishna is Maya. Krishna is just a creation of illusion. And Shunyavadis, they say that everything is illusion, and everything leads to nothingness. That when you eliminate everything, when you eliminate everything by the process of just understanding that everything is part of illusion, then when you have nothing left, that is Shunyavadi. And the Buddhists are examples of Shunyavadis. So these are the three. So Bhagavan Narada.
Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, my obeisances. Thank you for the class. I have, I guess, kind of a reflection. I don't know if it's offensive or controversial. I'm trying to think about how to word it, but you're speaking about associating with saintly personalities, which I feel is very grounding and practical. But it seems like sometimes there can be this great, amazing, spiritual, pure personality, and it almost seems like there could be a fine line between being enamored by this person and their aura, and almost like where you're a fan of them, and then that rubs off on other people, right? Rather than really trying to experience the purity that person has and how they're channeled. If this makes any sense, that sometimes we can become, I guess, more sentimental towards these personalities. Does this make sense, instead of actually seeing the power that they have? I guess.
Yes, I mean,
obviously, how do we avoid that?
Obviously, we avoid that, and also we understand a real personality by hearing from them. Therefore, that's why Srila Prabhupada says, I think it's in the purport to second chapter, text 54 of Bhagavad Gita, in the purport, Srila Prabhupada says that, or I think it's that one. He says, or I can't remember the exact verb, but in one of those purports, Srila Prabhupada says that anyone can appear a great personality until he speaks. No. Then when they speak, then you see what kind of knowledge they have. Of course, nowadays, there are people who speak, just like when I was a brahmachari, there was one guru, I guess I can mention his name since he's not on the planet anymore, it was Devananda. He used to come a lot to Latin America. So myself and Kirti Dev Prabhu, we were distributing Bhagavad Gitas, and we heard there was a conference by this Swami. So we thought, let's go and distribute Bhagavad Gitas, because everyone should be interested in Bhagavad Gita. So we arrived a little late. We had to go into the lecture. And so we had to sit through the lecture, and it was very painful because it was very Mayavadi. So at the end, Kirti Dev Prabhu couldn't resist. He said, so you say that everyone is God. So if I get a toothache, do I go to a spiritual dentist? Is there a special dentist for God with a toothache? Or, and he said, and he gave Prabhupada's examples. And also if there's a fire, so because I'm God, I shouldn't call the fire department because I won't burn, right? Because we're all God. Why should we call the fire department? We're all transcendental. So of course, because he spoke very nicely if you didn't know anything about spirituality. But, so sometimes even someone can speak nicely. Of course, afterwards, he started shouting at us, I know you are Hare Krishnas. And he kicked us out. But it worked very nicely because he was so rude to us that everybody got up and left, and they all bought Bhagavad Gitas on the way out. So it was Krishna's arrangement that all that happened like that. But anyway, we should try to hear, and we should try to see. That's why Srila Prabhupada says in Chaitanya Charitamrita, in the instructions to Sanatana Goswami, where he's telling Sanatana Goswami he should write this book, Hari Bhakti Vilas, and explain about initiation. And Prabhupada says, at least for 1 year, the guru should examine the disciple, and the disciple should examine the guru. Examine, not just you hear some nice. Anybody can speak something nice. I remember one sannyasi I used to know. He stopped being a sannyasi many years ago, but he could speak so wonderfully. I saw him give a lecture in a school of music, some famous school of music in Los Angeles, and he was so expert in preaching that everybody thought he was like, a topmost music teacher. But then, a few days later, I saw him coming down the sidewalk on the skateboard. And then I said, so Maharaj, can we speak? He said, yeah, come over to my place. And he was sitting there with a jar of peanut butter, eating it, watching cartoons. So the point is that someone sometimes can speak very nicely, but if you speak and you inquire enough, you will be able to see. And if you see how they're not only speaking, but how they're serving, how are they putting that speech into practice? Gyan vigyan. That is the way that we can understand. That's the way we should understand who is a saintly person. Not by just some sentimental thing that, oh, he speaks so nice, he smiled at me, he chants so beautifully. No, one should study and understand. So here's a question. We are advised to serve more advanced devotees, but we may sometimes be so needy or immature that we are trying to make the devotees or our spiritual master our order suppliers. Yes, that's a very good comment. But yes, we have to know how to serve devotees. Not only that you serve them, but you know how to serve them. Just like when I was in a bhakta, and I was in the army in Panama, and Hridayananda Maharaj came to visit me. I had never met a sannyasi in my life. I did see Vishnu Swami when he distributed me a Bhagavad Gita, but I didn't know he was a sannyasi. I didn't even know what a sannyasi was. So he came and was coming down the escalator, and I was so foolish that I just offered dandavats right in front of the escalator. All the people were like tripping over me, and he goes, get up. And so, sometimes our immaturity can lead to a not so pleasant situation. So we have to know, not only we have to serve, but we have to know how to serve. Therefore, Prabhupada says about Yayati Maharaj, that when Yayati asked Puru to accept his old age, he said, of course I will, my dear father. I only have one lamentation, that you had to tell me to do it. I should have anticipated. And Prabhupada says, a first-class disciple, a first-class devotee tries to understand what the spiritual master needs, what they want, what they need. That's first class. Second class is they tell you what they need. But first class is you study them, you hear from them, and then you understand how to serve properly. So I hope that answers your question. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Achaladharika.
Hare Krishna Gurudev. I heard you said many times in the past that if one offends a devotee and that devotee is no longer around, or the devotee does not want to accept your apology, you can serve other devotees. But will that really suffice for offending that devotee?
Well, Mahaprabhu, this was a question posed to Mahaprabhu by one Brahmin. And the Brahmin came and he said, I don't know what to do. I offended a devotee, but I don't know where he is. I don't know, he's gone. I don't know. It didn't mention if he had left the planet, but he wasn't there. They said, what do I do? And Mahaprabhu said two things: that you chant the holy name incessantly and you serve every Vaishnava you see. And that will compensate. So when Madai, he understood this principle. When he met Nityananda Prabhu on the banks of the Ganga, he offered prayers and he said, you are Varahadev, who lifted the earth and saved the earth, but I have offended you. He went through all the incarnations and what they did and said, I have offended you. And he said, therefore, please give me your mercy. And Nityananda said, you have received the mercy of my Lord, Gauranga. What you're finished, you're completely saved. He said, no, please tell me something else. And he said, well, then you can build a bathing ghat here on the Ganga, and that way you will serve all the Vaishnavas and all the residents of Navadvip. But he was so repentant that he went to the bottom step of the ghat after he built it. And he offered obeisances to every person and every Vaishnava that came to bathe there. So that's how seriously we should take an offense. We shouldn't just think, well, sometimes in India, I see, especially in kirtan, somebody will kind of step on your foot or swing around in their apparent ecstasy and slap you in the face. And then they'll just do some mudra, and it's gone. So it's not something mechanical. It has to come from the heart.
Or what if one does not know how to approach a devotee? I mean, because you're talking about serving devotees, right? If one really genuinely doesn't know how to approach a devotee, what is the best thing?
The best thing is go to class and hear. Srila Prabhupada said to live in the ashram and also to serve the Vaishnavas, one should come and hear the class on Bhagavad Gita and understand the importance of austerity. And then one can actually become qualified for service. So the best way you can serve a devotee is by serving. We may not serve them directly. First, we serve the temple. We serve, we do whatever service is given to us. And then by that, we become more qualified and we hear, our heart becomes purified, our hearing becomes purified, and we understand how to serve a devotee properly. But you can serve a devotee just by bringing a glass of water. Not such a difficult thing. Even if you don't know how to do some intimate or very complicated service or very deep service, you can just offer something. Offer a flower. Offer your service. What can I do for you? Prabhupada actually gave us the perfect, in his last letter to Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he gave us the perfect question of how to, he said, how can I serve you? Then you'll know exactly what to do. Say, how can I serve you? Go out, distribute books, clean the kitchen, cook the offering, get married, and raise a Krishna conscious family. So if we inquire like that, we can't make a mistake because we'll know exactly what to do.
Thank you very much.
So anyone else?
Maharaj, I just wanted to thank you for giving such a nice talk after only 3 hours of sleep. And,
By all of your mercy that I can say something, I think.
anyway, you're a wonderful example, and I feel guilty for sometimes engaging you because I know you have so much service, but you have so much to offer your listeners. So thank you very much.
Wow. I am a little busy nowadays, but I'm glad that Krishna, once Prabhupada said, the devotees took Prabhupada to New York, and Prabhupada had just spoken about, lust and how a devotee is free from lust. And so the devotees were dropping Prabhupada off. And they said, Prabhupada, we know that you are completely free from lust. You are free from all desires. And Prabhupada, as he got out of the car, he said, actually, I always try to keep engaged in service. That way, I'm not in Maya. So that was Prabhupada's humility. But he showed us that actually we should be engaged. As we heard from Prabhupada, he said that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur would always keep his devotees in the temples in poverty, so the devotees had to struggle to keep the temple going. And that way they would keep out of Maya. But as soon as they got their big building in Bagh Bazaar, everything was not paid for, and everybody was fighting over who would get the best room. So sometimes keeping very busy is a very good thing to do.
Hare Krishna. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, and thank all of you. All glory to Sri Guru, Sri Gauranga, Sri Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta
Jai.
Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Nitai
Jai.
Gaur Premanandi. Hari Bol.
Hari Hari
Devo.
Guru Prasad
Jai
Swami.
Gauranga.
Jai.
Very well. Thank
Hare
you,
Krishna.
ma'am.
Krishna Prabhuji, Dandavad.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji.